Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon session, Facebook Live question and answer session. My name's Drew Mellor and I'm the leader of BCP Council, and I'm here for the next half an hour primarily to talk about the COVID situation. Please ask any questions you may have in the comments bar, and I'll try and get to as many of them as possible. I thought it'd be useful just to start with a bit of an update in terms of where we are in the COVID situation. So our latest numbers per 100,000 of population are 811, which is quite remarkable in terms of scale. That's actually, the good news is that's just started to level off. You know, we were pushing 900 last week, and it's just started to come down. So the lockdown is making an impact, but it's worth noting that it's not making as big an impact as it was before, primarily because transmission of this new strain is significantly higher. I'll just, in terms of where we are in the national picture, so England are at 490 and the southwest as a region is 343. So we are significantly higher than both England and the local average. Where this is really important at the moment is in relation to our NHS. So, the latest data was we had 549 people across Dorset in a hospital bed with COVID, which is significantly in advance of where the existing original capacity for COVID was. So more and more of hospitals are having to be turned over to COVID. So it's really important, and we expect that to be still the case as for the next few weeks. So it's really, really important that we follow the messaging, which is stay at home and act like you've got it. Okay, fine. So let me look for some questions, and I'll come back to that later. Joanna Charles Jones has asked a really interesting question around are the COVID cases clusters, home, family shared, accommodation cases, etc. Most of the transmission we're finding, Joanna, is through homes, effectively in people's homes. So there are clusters. Having said that, as I said earlier on, the transmission is much more happening much more quickly through this strain of the virus. So we put some controversial messaging out over the weekend, trying to remind people that if you go out, you're at a greater likelihood of getting it than you were in the previous lockdown. So Joanna, thanks for the question. Yes, quite a lot of clusters, but there's increasing transmission for when we're outside too. Okay, let me see if we can find some other questions. Angela Taylor's asked a question in terms of when will business grants be paid. Thank you very much, Angela. That's really helpful. So there are a number of different parts of the business grants. One was it was called the LRSG grant, which was the existing grant that was for closed businesses with premises cost. And if you've applied for that one already, then you don't need to apply for it again. The money will come through as it did last time. And we're expecting that money to start going in as of this Friday. So effectively, people should start seeing their new payments under that scheme on Friday. We also set up a discretionary scheme, which is called the ARG. That's open, which is great, and again, money should be started to be paying from Friday. The first phase of that was for businesses that didn't have rental costs, so wouldn't have been in the LRSG, and that's open. So if you haven't applied already, you can still apply. The second part of the discretionary scheme, Angela, is around businesses in specific areas. So, for instance, we've talked about nighttime economy, hospitality, and the aerospace industry, for instance. So we've got a dedicated pot of money for businesses that have been affected. That's actually closed, but just in terms of an update on where that scheme is, we've had, let me just check the numbers, 375 applications in, and we're going through those in the next 2 weeks, and when we expect after that to be able to start paying on those as well, Angela. So colleagues will put in the messaging bar how people can apply, but hopefully that was useful, and a lot of money starts going out the door as of this Friday. Luke also asked a question about that, so I won't repeat it. Yeah, let me find some other questions. Fine. Okay, so Bethan Hartley has asked a question around how private alternative education service can access rapid testing for our learners and staff. to allow us to deliver a full service to our vulnerable young people, VHCPs, learners, VHCPs, etc. So effectively, Bethan, there's been a significant amount of rapid testing going into schools, and I'm pleased to say that now that there's been some further work that means that's now going to allow nursery settings to include those schools. In terms of private alternative education, we will put up in the comment bar here for specificity around that, but we are managing to get more and more rapid testing equipment in. As an aside, we've set up in Poole Civic Centre for council employees, particularly people who are accessing frontline services like care workers. So we're doing regular, as of this Monday, we're doing regular rapid testing. So there's significant work going into rapid testing. And Bethan, please respond here or contact me directly if there's a specific problem with your private alternative education. Okay, fine. Paul Draper, it's a question about the grants again, just if I haven't answered it. Can Stream 3 be expedited? Yes, Paul, I've already answered the questions about 1 and 2. We're very much looking at that. We're looking at ways we can actually have longer term benefit into that, and more will be announced shortly. I totally understand what you're saying in terms of the delay, and we're really pleased, that at least some money should be landing in terms of our ARG for this new wave as of Friday. Missy Parker, I don't have specific COVID-19 infection rates for BCP employees. I just refer you, we have now got testing. Really worth pointing out in terms of our testing for BCP employees, but testing in general. A third of people who have this virus have no symptoms. They're asymptomatic. So it's that increased testing, which we think is actually going to be really important. At the moment, the clear message is we're in a lockdown. People shouldn't be going out unless they absolutely have to for one of the permitted reasons. We'll just talk through what they are, just to remind ourselves. We shouldn't be leaving home other than to shop for basic necessities, go to work if you cannot do from home, exercise with your household or one other person. You're allowed to meet support bubbles and childcare bubbles, but where necessary, but only if you're legally permitted to form one. We're allowed to go out to seek medical assistance or avoid injury, and to attend childcare and education, but again only for those eligible. So that's the clear message at the moment. For people who do have to go out and work, testing is going to form a more important part of how we're comfortable with the asymptomatic tests. Nikki Sanderson, you're asking a question, will schools only reopen if our numbers come down and rates slow? And what will that be split into BCP and Dorset again? And can I ask, we're not all just Dorset and we will split, yeah, fine. It's a question about being split with Dorset in the tier system as well. So, Nikki, the government have been really clear that schools opening is a priority, is the first thing that they will try and open. There's a huge issue in terms of the rate at the moment, and our current rates, I'll just repeat them for people who might not have been on earlier. Our rates are 811 per 100,000 people, which is huge. And just to pause on that for briefly, when Leicester went into regional lockdown right at the start of it in the summer, the more tiered regional system, they were near about 40, and we're 811. So we're a long way off, effectively locally, schools being able to open. This is a government decision, and they're clear they want to do it as soon as possible. If we look at what government has said, they believe that the majority of the vulnerable people in the first categories will have been vaccinated by the middle of February. So if we then opening up to other groups after that, and there's been some pressure and saying, well, actually we should be putting other people further up the categories, i.e. school teachers or police officers, etc. So I know government are looking at that and discussing that. We locally can't comment on it effectively, but our schools will only be able to open them when it's considered safe to do so. And you also asked about we're in a different tier to Dorset. So for the majority of this, we've been in the same tier as Dorset. There was a brief period in and around just before we went into lockdown, where Dorset was in a lower tier than us, which caused some issues. Spencer Flower, the leader of Dorset, and myself were clear that we wanted to go in and out of tiers together, because that's effectively how people live their lives across the county. It's a government decision and it's based on the numbers, so we actually don't have control over that. The government have been clear that when we come out of this, it would be gradual. It would come back to a tier system most probably, and our position will be we would like to be considered in the same vein as Dorset, as a Dorset-wide populace. Worth noting that Dorset's numbers are currently significantly lower than ours, about half of our numbers. Okay. Got a question about social distancing and Keyhole Bridge. Why are we choosing to reopen Keyhole Bridge to vehicles, particularly when council reports demonstrate its reopening will only have negative impacts? Carol, not entirely agree with you there. So there was part of the consultation that happened in and around Keyhole Bridge that said was very balanced, and some local campaigning which then made the numbers go significantly in one way. What we're doing in terms of the Keyhole Bridge, which for people who don't know is the emergency travel regulations, when some roads were closed to enable more cycling, less cars. It was a real interesting debate at the time, and still is. What we've done as an administration is listen to the ward councillors. So we've tried to promote the views of the local ward councillors. And Keyhole Bridge is in Parkstone, and both of the ward councillors have been really clear that they believe it's in their interests of their community and the feedback they're getting from their community to open it. So hopefully that is useful. Thanks for the question, Carol. Okay, so Joanna Charlize Jones has asked an interesting question about second home users coming down at weekends or staying longer when they're currently not allowed to. How is that being monitored? So first of all, Joanna, really important question, and worth me saying, people aren't allowed to travel to second homes. You know, we're supposed to be staying at home and only leaving for the express reasons I read out earlier. We won't read out those again here. So that's not allowed. If people are aware of other people using second homes in that way, then we're very happy to be contacted. There are three main ways of any, this is an example of a breach of a COVID rule. There's three main ways that we effectively look to enforce those. The police are the enforcing body, so the police would like to know if people are breaking rules, and I think we've had some really clear guidance from the police locally and nationally that they're going to be enforcing the rules in a stricter sense than have been before. Our NHS is under significant pressure, and our police are doing a phenomenal job stepping up to the plate to now enforce that. The other two ways of enforcement, at the lower level on the council side, it is the COVID marshals. So COVID marshals are going around primarily checking retail venues, etc., just to see they're compliant with the regulations and trying to convince people and report back in, etc. And then we've got our environmental health officers. COVID marshals don't have any enforcement powers. Our environmental health officers do. So by all means, if people are aware of COVID breaches, I believe we've had 67 reports of COVID breaches coming into us. Please let us know, and we will either refer to the police, or if it's an environmental health COVID marshal matter, we'll deal with it ourselves. Okay, so Paris has asked a question in terms around why are schools not doing live sessions as lessons as standard? Our school's offline learning offering is based marking work, etc. So Paris, it's look, schools have been in a hugely difficult position in terms of how they've had to step this up at such pace. The understanding I've had from interactions I've had with schools, and I'm a governor at one, is that that's actually been significantly, I won't say easier, but better able to be stepped up this time, because we've been through this process before. If there's specific issues, then we're very happy to hear about it. One other issue, for us as a local authority, is a lot of schools are now an academy trust, so we have less direct impact with them. But that's saying if there is issues, one, we've all got to be very sympathetic to the huge and difficult job schools are doing, please let us know of any specific issues, and we will contact them and have a discussion about it. Okay. So, Graham Tuffin, good to see you. You've got a question in terms of 300 AUB new students are to take their places in the new accommodation blocks in Gillett Road. And you're saying you thought unis were on lockdown. Comment, please. So, my understanding, Graham, and I can absolutely check this for you, as you'll be aware, AUB is Arts University Bournemouth is in my ward. The government isn't advising students to travel to and from university at the moment, and when they do, they've talked about a staggered way of doing it, so you don't have mass students. At the moment, the advice is really clear, Graham. We're in a national lockdown, so I would be surprised if people were moving into AUB accommodation in the short term. I will check that and come back to you directly. Okay, so I've got a question from John Moran around leaflets, effectively. Why was the guidance issued by yourself via leaflets contradicting government guidance, and specifically on exercise? Okay, well, John, I'd be very surprised if that was the case, because the leaflets that we've delivered, and just to give everybody some background, over the last week we've delivered a small leaflet to every household in BCP that reiterates the guidance around staying at home and why, effectively. And all that leafleting was, it wasn't our paperwork, it was from government sources, effectively. So it would be nearly impossible for that to be contradicting government advice. So let me just run through the guidance specifically on exercise. We're being told clearly that we should be only exercising once a day, where it should be locally, effectively, so we shouldn't be driving significant distances to access exercise. We are allowed to exercise with one other person outside of our household, but I think it's worth actually, in certain circumstances, it's really important for people to do that for their mental health. But if it's a choice, it's worth me stating that from the data I've seen, this transmission of this virus is significantly worse than previously, and that includes when we're outside. So I just think we should all reflect slightly. Do we want, if we need to exercise with other people, do we need to? But John, the guidance on exercise, I believe, is clear, and our guidance was the same as the national stuff. But if you would like to put a further message here or contact me directly, my email address is drew.mellor@bcpcouncil.gov.uk. Very happy to look into that for you. Thank you, John. Okay, so Gareth Kent has asked a question. Is it possible to get a discount on council tax, as we're not able to use the facilities we pay for? Gareth, really a fair and interesting question. So local councils are under immense financial pressure. And so, and we significantly rely on council tax as a means for providing the services that we do provide. And we're, as an authority, a little bit more dependent on council tax than some other authorities. So there isn't a council tax discount, effectively. What we have done, and we actually announced it this week, was we've moved a band effectively from £150 to £200 in terms of council tax support we're able to offer. What that basically means is we've brought more people into not having to pay council tax. We're really pleased to do that. We've got our budget round effectively being announced on Friday, and we're looking very hard at how we can lead the way in terms of some sympathy around council tax rises, effectively, Gareth. So we'll have more to say on that on Friday. Thank you very much for your question. Okay, fine, let me look at some more. Right, I've talked about Keyhole Bridge. We've done that one as before. So Carly Guy question: welcome the school's approach to pre-record classes to allow working parents to actually do their jobs and balance homeschooling. They're doing a great job. Yeah, Carly, it was really, thank you for raising that, because we had a question about some of the digital work in schools before from somebody earlier, and it's fair to say, quite obviously, that you're going to get mixed approaches from schools. It's hugely beneficial, and I've got 2 young children, fully understand the difficulties of balancing, homework. So, I just thank the teachers and the school system for stepping that up. Okay, let me try and find something I haven't answered. Okay, so Keith Shanksker, why are people parking on yellow lines, and have you seen the graffiti around Bournemouth Town and Boscombe? Keith, okay, so just two parts to that question. So we still have full parking enforcement, effectively, so people shouldn't be parking on yellow lines. There's no reason for them to. And if you parked on double yellow lines and our officers are there, you will be ticketed. If there's specific examples of where enforcement isn't working, please let us know. We'd be really keen to have a look at that. You've asked a question about graffiti in Bournemouth Town and Boscombe. Keith, really important pieces here. We came out in just before Christmas with some statements around pride, trying to regain pride in our town centres. So if there is graffiti, specific graffiti, we'd like to know about it. Our aspiration and ambition is very much to make our town centres and our whole place something we can be really proud of. So we put significant extra money into street cleaning, particularly relevant actually on the street cleaning part in terms of Christchurch, because where Dorset Council had different levels of cleansing than across Poole and Bournemouth. So we've been able to level up, and we've been getting some great responses that people are happier with the street cleansing in Christchurch. That now needs to filter across the conurbation and into our town centres. I've talked briefly about our budget that's coming forward on this Friday. There's more money, so the money we put in is being baked into the system long term, and there's more money coming in for not just cleaner but safer. So we agree that we need to get it cleaner and safer. Joanna, you mentioned a comment around traffic wardens. As I said, I've just talked about that, and effectively we do. We should, we have our traffic wardens all working. Okay, thank you very much. I'll try and find some other questions now. Helen, that's a really interesting question that I don't know the answer to, but I'll make sure we get one to you. How could you advise or signpost how and where, as self-employed, I can access the rapid test kit services the government announced would be available for those unable to work from home? I know from from one of our businesses, you're able to actually purchase them. I believe they're about £20 a test. Our air conditioning business, we've purchased a significant number. What I'll do, if somebody can't reply here, I'll check this message back and make sure we come back to you and publicise that, because I think it's a really important how we can access more testing. And Helen, I'm not sure if you were on earlier, but effectively I was talking about a third of people are asymptomatic. So what you've talked about is really important, and we'll make sure we get an answer to you. Okay, I realise I'm sort of 10 minutes behind on questions, so there's a significant number of questions coming in. Okay, so let me just scroll down a little bit. Yeah, okay. Fine. Elizabeth is asking a question in terms of toilets. Just to say, as a policy, all of our toilets are open. So we haven't actually. What would happen previously in the first lockdown was a lot of our toilets were closed or opened up gradually. So all of our toilets should be open. So you asked a specific question about Portman Ravine. We'll look into that. And see, it would be an operational issue if there is one, because as a policy, just to be clear, all of our toilets are open. Okay, so April, really interesting question. April Ann, I believe it's Helia. Are you allowed to travel to another county to drop off child to other parent? So effectively, I've got a similar situation to this in myself. So effectively, it's not a child, but so my mum is a single household, so she's able to bubble with us. That's on the Isle of Wight. So effectively, technically, we are allowed to go to a different county because to pick people up. The advice very clearly is that you're supposed to bubble with people that are in your locality. So I think there's an element of, even though that specific scenario is allowed, we're actually not doing it because we think if we don't have to, it would flout the rules. Having said that, technically, April, I believe you are allowed to travel out of county to drop off your child in that, because it's effectively in that bubble context. But we really shouldn't try and reduce travelling everywhere possible. Okay, fine. Kim's saying there are traffic wardens about, which is great. I'll just move on, try and find something I haven't answered. Okay. Yeah, Ian, it's really interesting question. You talked about please shut the car parks at beaches and beauty spots, stop the spread, keep local. Ian, yeah, it's a really challenging question, and ultimately there's a judgment call there. We are allowed to exercise. We are allowed to drive to exercise. We need your point at the end there. Keep local, absolutely, and we need to reinforce that. Exercise should be local, but that doesn't mean the judgment call we've made is that doesn't mean that some people still wouldn't be able to travel and use the beaches as part of their exercise. So we hear you. It's difficult. It's something we keep under review, but our view currently is that the car parks need to stay open. So that people accessing exercise can actually still do that. Yeah. Okay. Laura Jones is asking a question about the local the LRSG grant. So I'll read the question out, Laura. The LRSG closed grant for businesses closed due to lockdown, and a one-off grant accelerator grant announced by the Chancellor. There's no update on the BT website as to when this will happen or be paid. Laura, so I did mention that effectively money should be coming out on Friday for the closed scheme, and there's a new one-off top-up lockdown grant as of the 5th of January, and again we're expecting to be paying that on Friday, working through those at the moment. So and if you've historically applied for that, then you don't have to apply again. It will just be carried forward. So hopefully, Laura, I haven't read the rest of your question. We've only got 3 minutes left. Hopefully that's enough of an answer to start. Okay. Graham Tuffin again. What's the future? Sorry, not again, Graham. Lovely to hear from you as ever. What's the future for Poole Park Railway? Clearly, COVID will have a major change to its development. Okay, probably two things in one here, Graham. So really delighted to say that the money to reopen Poole Park Railway has been found, and we'll be opening Poole Park Railway. Clearly, as you say, it has to be in a COVID secure environment. Where that is going to be, much easier to do is at some point in the summer. We have got a vaccine programme. There's been massive rollout of our vaccine. We're doing really well in Dorset in terms of how we're addressing that. When I say we, it's very much led by the NHS, so huge, congratulations to them. We've got our volunteer network has been brilliant. Anybody who would like to volunteer to help with the vaccination rollout, can100.org is the website to do that on. So as and when we can start opening up, because we've got more vaccinations done at the pace that it's happening, then effectively we should be able to enjoy a summer, and be positive about the summer. And hopefully Poole Park Railway reopening as a commitment of ours is good news, and we look forward to that and many other attractions throughout the summer. Okay. Amanda Dixon, you're asking about not going to trade, Barbershop effectively. We have put some there are grants available, both the discretionary scheme and which the phase 1 is open. Please have a look at that. If you've got a premises, then the LRSG is open. Perhaps listen back to this, or other people will be putting in the chat bar, our officers, how to access that, Amanda. There is support available. Okay, we've only got about a minute left. Okay, clamping versus towaway. Joanna Charles Jones has asked a question about clamping versus towaway. Greater revenue earner, easier to administer. It's worth mentioning, Joanna. So what we didn't have last summer was the ability, both either legally or in terms of our capacity to tow vehicles away. We saw what happened, when our beaches were overrun. So now we do have the capacity. So we legally have the powers to tow away vehicles. So we will be doing. More of that as and when required. It's a much more effective deterrent than what's sometimes a relatively modest fine. We're absolutely committed to, when it comes to this summer. Ties into the question around vaccinations and etc. We want us to have a great summer. It's a good time for me to sort of leave on this message. There's light at the end of this tunnel. We're in a really serious situation. Our numbers are high, they're going down, but they're not going down quickly enough. But we're expecting, through the vaccine rollout that's going really well, and by the end of March, the majority of people over 50 should have had access to a vaccine. We're expecting to have a strong summer. We want to be ready for it. We want to be able to welcome people, and to do that, we need to have good enforcement in our parking. So Joanna, thank you for the question. Tow away is something we're able to do. Okay, so we haven't got any more time here, so I just thank everybody very much for their time. We'll go through the rest of the questions. I see I'm about 9 minutes behind on some of them, so there's bound to be some I haven't answered, which we will go through and answer now. We're doing the next one of these sessions in 2 weeks, so they're every 2 weeks at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday. Thank you very much for joining. The clear message just to leave on is we are in a national lockdown. Please stay at home unless you absolutely have to. Leave the house. And clear message: a third of people don't know they've got this virus, and it's really prevalent in our communities and very transmissible at the moment. So please act like you've got it. Keep well. Thank you everybody for your time and your questions. We'll come back and answer more of them now, and I look forward to seeing those of you who return in 2 weeks' time. But thank you very much for your time, and stay well. Bye bye.